Hello, everyone, and welcome to another American Scouser podcast. I am your host, Timuchin. As always, here in Chicago, awaiting ridiculous snow tomorrow, apparently. So I guess we waited until almost February. I will take it. With us today, as always, is Gally. Gally, what's happening?
What's happening, guys?
And Bickler, I hear you guys are getting boatloads of snow. You're coming your way as well. What's happening over there?
Hey, don't joke, man. We had snow in the forecast and they canceled school for like 4 days. So
I wasn't joking. I just saw this on TV that you guys are getting like 6 to 8 inches or something over there.
I haven't seen anything about that, but I think that's further like in the state. Coastal, like we usually skate through on the coast with just the ice, which is actually worse than the cumulative snow, in my opinion. Well, yeah, we've been pretty lucky. It's still far too cold for my likes. Anything below 60 degrees is completely unacceptable, in my opinion. And it has been in the 30s and 40s for 2 weeks now, and I'm absolutely sick and tired of it.
Anything below 60 sounds like a dude who spent way too much time in California, like you did. Because anything like over 40, I'm pretty cool with at this point.
After growing up in northern Michigan, I feel like I hit my snow quota by the time I was like 12, and then just like I'm skating like I feel like I need to retire from that weather.
That does make sense to me, seeing to the fact that I was basically cursing everyone that's in our group out that live in places like the West Coast or Arizona when I was outside and it was 11 degrees at 6 o'clock on Saturday and I was snow blowing, and every 5 feet I walked, I would just get the wind blow straight back in my face. And yeah, it's not good.
It's good times. It's always good times. Well, we got a lot to talk about, stuff that we didn't think we would need to talk about. There's a lot going on, so we'll get to that. But as always, your guys' favorite segments, well, at least the audience's favorite segment, we have the trivia section going on. So I spent a lot of time actually trying to find some potato trivia for our friend Bickler over here. And well, let's start with the Liverpool trivia first, and then we'll go from there. I found out some interesting stuff as I was looking at sweet potatoes. If somebody is monitoring my Google, I won't be shocked if I start getting like all kinds of sweet potato ads on my social media feed and stuff like that pretty soon here. There was a lot of searching going on. We'll go with a basic one, though, first, before we get to that kind of a trivia, which is Liverpool related. It's an easy one. Here we go. The first Liverpool game score back in the day in 1892, September 1st, 1892. You might have come across this actually here and there. It's basic history, man. Come on. You see, Galleys, you would become Bickler, dude. You do not like any of the questions. I'm amazed. I'm waiting for Bickler to kind of like rephrase the question somehow, like first official game or first championship game, or
did they have preseason back then?
So what do you have, Bickler?
I mean, I'm imagining the Nets were just basically two buckets they put on their side, and score, huh? Like 2-1.
2-1. Dave Leslie says, happy belated birthday to Dave Leslie, by the way. He had posted in the US fan group that he hit 50. I was trying to recruit him so that we have some contributors that are older than me, but still working on that. Gally.
That's a whole new level of age discrimination right there. You will only be considered if you happen to be older than the dictator. What'd you guess, Paul? 2-1?
Yes.
Did you even say which team got 2?
I mean, I was going to guess Gerard, but I figured
that.
I was going to guess Gerard, but I figured Timuchin wouldn't allow it.
Gerard with a brace back in 1892. Yeah, BJ. Actually, I forgot that BJ is older than me. Thank God. We need more people.
I'm gonna go 2-0 to the good guys.
So here's another tip. I don't know why the LFC America contributors, the name does not show up if they do not click the link on top, but it's also the score of a famous World Cup match.
Oh, see, I've got to mute these comments because now I see it.
Yeah, there you go. Against Rotherham, 7-1.
You know, I was about to guess. I was like, did Neymar get kicked in the back? Like, probably would have been the only thing to make it better.
So 7-1 was the answer to that. So let's have some other fun while we're at trivia, because I know how much you guys like this segment. So some further trivia based on our potato conversation, and I'm still waiting for sweet potato recipes to be submitted. I had one actually sent to me via message, but honestly, I didn't like it myself, so I'm not going to go over it over here. So as you guys might know, apparently every state has a state vegetable for the most part. Did you guys know, or do you know your state's vegetable? I'm in Illinois. Apparently, sweet corn is the state's vegetable. Only in US, I think, states have official vegetables and fruits and stuff like that. But Bigler, do you know North Carolina's vegetable?
Of course I do. This is a fucking softball, man. It's longleaf tobacco.
Not even close.
Okay.
A vegetable that you might know and perhaps one day like is the state vegetable of North Carolina. You can't make this shit up, people. Jamie says is Bush Light, which is probably possible in North Carolina.
Veggies, I would think collard greens maybe, but I mean, that's probably not going to be right.
North Carolina, land of Bickler. Would you know and be shocked to know that the state vegetable is sweet freaking
That's
potato?
100% bullshit. There's no way, dude.
Go off to Google you go, my friend.
You know
off to Google you go.
You know how much North Carolina country I've driven through and never seen like roadside like sweet potatoes on the side of the road? There's no way.
You're a disgrace to North Carolina. Massachusetts, what do you have over there?
I'm fine with that.
State vegetable.
I have no idea, actually. It's funny. He said the longleaf tobacco. I was going to say in 2022 or 2021, I think anyone would tell you that the national product of Massachusetts is marijuana and or cannabis and or weed, because you can get it at more places than you can get a loaf of bread nowadays in Massachusetts. But for an actual vegetable, does Massachusetts even have one?
Do they?
I feel like Massachusetts.
I don't know, man. You live there. I
That'd be a short growing season.
I actually believe that I don't think Massachusetts has an official vegetable.
That is correct. Massachusetts is either too cool to have a vegetable or not cool enough to have a vegetable.
I think the truth is we can't grow shit except for weed because we grow that shit
goddamn cold to grow anything. That could be it.
Exactly.
So let's get back to, now that we established another North Carolina sweet potato connection over here, let's get back to Liverpool. So this was us talking about the transfer window just a week ago. January, next Monday is going to be the last day. By the time we record, we'll know what the hell happened. Are we even talking about a signing, or are we talking about, we're reading all the FSG out people's comments? Gally, what's your gut feeling? Do we have anybody new in that squad?
No, we have 5 new rumors of players that we're monitoring to be linked with in the summer. There's no one coming in January, and if they do, it would be great. But honestly, if this club was going to do business in January, they would have done it on the 1st.
Bickler, what do you think?
I mean, I think they already said they weren't doing business in January, and then we're all going to act surprised, and we're all going to say FSG out and how tight they are and complain about how we've never replaced Genie. It'll be yes. I'm going to call out sick.
Yeah, I feel like there will be a couple of players leaving, either on loan or sold. But I think the market is still not where we want it to be. January. Yeah. Nailed it.
Wow.
Do I get partial credit for knowing some people are?
Hey, in our defense, we were completely lied to by club ownership. So
yes. How dare
one more
they
reason
give us everything? So I mean, obviously, a kind of like a bigger striker. I mean, we weren't alone in that. I don't think anybody expected us to do any signings, leave alone. I mean, I would consider that pretty much a major signing over here. Bickler, what do you make of it? We're gonna have the Delaware guys kind of like chime in and give their take on Luis Diaz as a player. But what do you make of the deal overall and kind of like how it came about? Kind of like obviously it's smart business, more like taking care of the advantage of the opportunity in some ways and putting ourselves in a good situation. But what do you made of it?
So most like reputable sources had this guy as our number one target in the summer. So love the fact we got him now. I think it only happened because we got basically alerted that Tottenham was in the mix and ready to table a bid. So I think that's what kind of expedited this thing. The player's preference was us because we're awesome. So I mean, I think it's a great move for a number of reasons. He's in his prime. He's 25 years old. He's an absolute flyer. He's got pace that kills. He's almost exclusively a left-sided attacker, and we know that our front three, Salah, Firmino, Mane, will all be 30 by the summer. And Mane certainly, looks like he needs some rest and rotation. So really, really good signing, in my opinion, from just all the paper stuff. What's interesting is I've seen wages anywhere between $64,000 a week up to $90,000. There seems to be some that one's got a little bit of range. People are not real sure on that one yet that I've seen. But the thing that I love about that is so say he comes out of the gates and kills it like Jota. Usually within 2 years of a club, you get a bumper extension. You sign another deal. So on the wages that we got him for and the price that we got him for, we can essentially extend him long-term when he's like 27 years old, and he will still fit to the mid to bottom of our wage bracket, even if he gets a substantial raise in weekly wages. So from a financial standpoint, it's a phenomenal deal as well. We sent $6 million over and basically saved Porto from, some serious issues with Champions League and all the financial issues they're having. I think what's interesting about the way that he plays is he's an inverted winger, but he does not tuck in like Mo and Mane did. Now, he may adapt his game and Klopp may develop him into that. But if he continues to stay as a wide attacker who prefers to stay wide, I think that really paves the way for maybe possibly like a 4-2-3-1 in the future, which will open up room for either a traditional number 9 striker, whether that's Jota or somebody else. And it allows the left-sided mid to be more of an attacking style mid that doesn't have to play both ways as much. So I think it creates some exciting possibilities moving forward just based on the way he plays.
Yeah, it was kind of odd that, Porto's in a situation where the classes are starting, but he hasn't paid his tuition yet, kind of thing, can't go into class. We need some money, otherwise we're going to get kicked out of Europe kind of deal. And we step in, and obviously the Grujic deal helps the cause as well. What do you think, Gally? And obviously I just played the clip. We're all we're not expecting this, but what do you make of the deal overall?
So one, it's a great move. We need to do more Thursday night podcasts and start saying things right at the end of those podcasts. Like, we're not signing anyone. And then an hour later, we're in Discord and Megan and I are finding these tweets and she's yelling at me like, why didn't you just break this on the podcast? And start talking about it there. Because anyone who doesn't know, we are like investigative reporters in our Discord channel. We had people scouring places in Colombia, and people were looking at things in Portugal, and we had people actually finding multiple sources and all right, we're up to 3. One person stayed up, I think, till 3 a.m, hoping it would get announced. That's how ridiculous we are. But I was excited for it. I was most excited for the action in which the club took. So I agree with Paul on the stance that I believe he was our number 1 target. I do believe since he played the great double-legged tie against Manchester City last year, and he's shown against them. He had the wonder goal in the game behind closed doors. I think that Klopp saw him firsthand and knew what kind of a player he was, and we heard Klopp rave about him after both matches, which is always an easy way for Klopp to start the media in tapping up his next signing so that he doesn't get, flicked on the mouth like calling Virgil at his apartment and asking him if he wants to sign before he could. And I think that the player fits our wage structure. He fits our age profile. And more than anything, he is the first step in turning over this squad. And I think we've been talking about Jurgen having a little bit of squad refresh that I really believe would have started after the title season had the pandemic not happened. And the fallout of the pandemic has made it to this point. So I also thoroughly enjoy that they basically allowed for Spurs to negotiate the deal for 2.5 weeks, get it to the point where it just came down to him agreeing to wages. And if reports are true, Spurs offered him $100,000 a week, but he had his heart set on getting and playing in the Champions League and playing for Liverpool and playing for Klopp. So really, he, the player, kind of used Spurs to get everything in order. And then Liverpool jumped in right at the last second, negotiated a price, and we're going to end up getting this player, right, for $15 million less counting wages than Aston Villa paid for Ollie Watkins. And that's the thing to me. It's the premium. It's the fact that Chris Wood just went for 25 million pounds, right? And we got this guy for 37.5 million euros. That's a pretty unbelievably attractive. And I know there's bonuses and structure, but really to me, that is what separates us in the market. We identify players, we identify fits, and then we go out and we execute that when we have to. And I think that it was a huge, huge move. And more importantly than anything, I think there's a good chance this guy is ready to be a first team starting 11 player to start next campaign. And that wouldn't have happened had he waited to summer to come, because he wouldn't have had that 2-3 months of bedding in, getting used to the city, getting used to the training regimen, getting used to his teammates. And I just think that the signing, the extra 3.5-4 months of training, I think it's just going to do this kid a world of good next year when he plays his first full season.
Yeah, I want to get your guys' take on that whole Tottenham ordeal and Tottenham going to mom and dad and like complaining that, you know, somebody's took their toy and playing with it instead and stuff. I mean, it just made no sense, that whole ordeal at all. And I mean, I believe obviously Tottenham being interested in making those offers kind of forces our hand. And this was probably going to be something that was going to wait for the summer. I mean, Jamie, I think on one of the comments earlier mentioned it, that, you know, we probably would not go after somebody in January that we're not going to go after summer. This kind of like forced our hand. Not to mention, I think going back to what you're saying, Gally, we saw an opportunity to kind of like take advantage of Porto's situation, more importantly, kind of like save the day for them and get a good deal for us. So before we go into this more, let's listen in on the guys from Delaware. Paul and Sean are the ones joining us this week with their take on the whole Luis Diaz deal.
We are Sean and Paul, and our podcast is First Day Copites. And our segment today is about the signing of Luis Diaz from Porto for, I think it's, 30 odd million pounds, 40 million euros plus add-ons. We're really excited. Actually, we just were chatting about some of the things that he brings, so we'll touch on some of those. But first of all, Sean, what was your reaction to finally being right about one of the transfers of the January window, which we don't really usually do?
Well, I really wasn't expecting us to sign anybody of significance in this window. So this one kind of reminds me of when we signed Fabinho, where it just seemed, almost came out of the blue. We had been linked with him a little bit, but it didn't seem like anything solid. Seemed like, maybe, one of these, maybe we might go for him in the summer. But as it turns out, he was clearly one of our prime targets for the summer. And it looks like, it seems like initially the story I read was that Porto wanted 60 million. We said that's too high for us. Then Spurs basically negotiated a deal for a lower fee, and we kind of swooped in and said we'd match that fee. And, that's how things kind of turned out. But yeah, he seems like a really exciting, fantastic player. I'm anxious to see him play.
Yeah. So we've taken a look at some of the numbers. I know other people have done this, but in touches in the box and expected goals, he's in the 95th, 96th percentile this season in Portugal. And we can debate, the quality of the Portuguese league, but I think we're pretty convinced that Porto did a pretty good job against champions of Italy and Spain this season in the group stages, even if they didn't go through. That's up from like low 80 percentile last year. His numbers around dribbles, successful dribbles, are really good. And overall, He looks like he's the right age at 25 to fill in some of the gaps in our team for a few years to come. What else would you call out that makes you excited about him?
Well, I pulled up the FB Ref has a scouting profile that I think they get from Opta on every player, and the things that stood out the most to me were his dribbling stats. He's 90 percentile or above, like, dribbles completed, dribbles attempted, players dribbled past, and apparently he loves to nutmeg players, which would be fun and exciting. Heard some people compare him to both Mane and Suarez, and definitely the nutmegging would be a reminder of Suarez. He used to love do that kind of stuff too. But the thing that really stood out to me was under the defensive stats, he is a 98th percentile on tackles in the attacking third, which I thought was interesting because of our style of play.
Yep.
And then also successful pressures. And again, I'm not exactly sure how they measure this. It's an Opta stat, so you can probably look it up. But he's 92nd percentile in successful pressures, which is basically, pressing, high pressing. And then in terms of dribbles past, he doesn't get dribbled past very often either. He's 84th percentile there. So, I think that the dribbling numbers are interesting because, if he is playing that left side role with Mane, we know that we often rely on Mane for kind of that one-to-one. He's very good, kind of one-to-one beating players. To me, this says to me that we've chosen him for that role. Obviously he's familiar with that left side role, but there are a lot of similarities. And if you watch the clips, I think he would remind you a bit of Mane, especially when we signed Mane. Just that kind of player, very fast, powerful. He's wiry and but he seems to be a lot stronger than he might look on the surface, being as skinny as he is. So
all that looks absolutely awesome. So Timuchin, hopefully this segment works out in terms of how you're going to fit in the show. But Luis Diaz, lots of reasons to be excited, even if you're not a stat nerd.
There's a lot of good stats in there that kind of makes your mouth water. And thanks to the guys from Delaware, Paul and Sean, as always. We're going to try to feature them as much as possible throughout on like their different takes on different issues and stuff. But so having heard all those numbers and everything there, Paul, realistically, when do you think we will see him actually play?
I mean, I think it's going to be sooner than later. I don't think it's going to be. I know Klopp likes to bed players in slowly, but I mean he's built to go. He's 25 years old. He's in his prime. He's playing starting football. He's familiar with the pace and physicality. He's an experienced international at this point. I think he's going to get rotated in pretty quickly, similar to how we saw Jota coming in spots. I don't think he's going to. I clearly don't think he's going to start off the bat. I don't think any of the front three are really in jeopardy of that happening. But I think he's going to get bedded in pretty quickly. And honestly, it's in the club's interest it's sooner rather than later.
What do you think, Gally? Like, if you put a date on it, when do you think we see him out there, or a game on it?
If I'm putting a game on it, I think he's playing in like the third or maybe about 2 weeks in the Premier League. And if he could make an appearance, in say an FA Cup, maybe his first start might be not obviously Sunday, but the following FA Cup match might be the next one. I just feel like, to Paul's point, I do think he's going to see game time like Jota did not far after he comes, because he'll be ready to give you 10, 15 minutes and be an impact sub. And he's a better option than Origi, than Taki, than Ox, than Jones, than anything we have up front, other than maybe the Bobby Jota, because they just understand that front four. And I do expect him to start sporadically some Premier League games and even Champions League matches between now and the end of the year. Guys, I think he was brought in here to either create a moment to get Sadio Mane back to his form, or be the reason that helps push him to the idea that maybe this isn't the club form anymore. Because his form has gone down for about 18 months, really drastically the last year. And We knew that there had to be a refresh and a turnover. Paul said it multiple times. These guys are all going to be north of 30 by the start of next season. We're all in on re-signing Mo and investing as him as the focal point of the team moving forward. And we understand what Bobby brings. So, at his age, I think he can do more. If you ask me which one of the three do I believe will be the first to leave Liverpool, I think it would probably be Sadio Mane. And I think this purchase only probably makes that happen faster. And if, I know we'll talk outgoings and those kind of things on future weeks and pods. I'm not saying Mane's done, but I do believe that those two are going to be rotating more the way I believe Bobby and Jota will rotate more through the second half of this season.
I'm glad you kind of went there, because I kind of wanted to ask you guys and get your guys' take on that. Obviously, bringing somebody like this and due to his position, the immediate reaction was is Mane's replacement. And going back to what Paul is saying, it could be like a formation change down the road and stuff like that. How do you guys think this impacts the squad as is now, like rest of the season? I mean, when you're looking at a guy like Mane, we know the fan base, right? You missed two and you're like, get this guy out of there and stuff. Very short memory and like knee-jerk reactions. But at the moment, at least, because of maybe a lack of options, at least we were able to give, Mane, Mo, Bobby, when he struggled, more time to be able to kind of play out of those struggles, right? Does that kind of affect that and change that now, Bickler? Because you're going to have somebody like this, or knowing Klopp, he's going to be able to manage this and not affect. Because, when we talk about, especially with Sadio, we were more like, man, if he gets a couple of goals and if he gets his confidence back, we can have the old Sadio back. I mean, does this affect it? Because having to look over your shoulder can kind of backfire.
Yeah, I mean, I don't think the club knows exactly what's going to happen with Sadio Mane. I think that they're kind of on the fence as to whether he signs an extension or whether we move on from him. I tend to look at our business and I tend to think that we buy replacements a couple windows ahead of time, right? I mean, if you look at this club, we talk about Genie all the time, but Thiago was before that. Thiago was essentially the replacement for that situation. We look at Jota coming in. He hasn't fully replaced Bobby yet, but Bobby's going to be north of 30. I tend to think that I actually tend to think that we looked initially at Jota as somebody who could potentially replace Sadio Mane, and then realized that Jota enjoys being central so much and is so good centrally that's where he started to see minutes, especially when Bobby started to struggle with fitness and injuries. So I don't think that Jota has replaced Bobby yet. In my opinion, I still like Bobby starting because I think there's more impact with Jota coming off the bench. And I think Bobby's too important to our midfield, the way he plays. He makes our entire midfield better. So for me, when I look at our front three, Salah, Firmino, Mane, and I look at Jota and Diaz, they're both 25 years old. They're both exactly 5 years younger than the guys ahead of them. And I don't think that's on accident. If you look at the club, it's pocketed. There's Thiago, right? He's 30. There's Keita. He's 5 years younger right behind him. Like, you look at Fabinho, and then you've got another youngster right behind him. Like, it's very purposeful. Even when you look at the contracts are staggered in a way that we don't have a ton of contracts for one position expiring at the same time. Everything is super deliberate across the board. So I think that Diaz and Jota are long-term. Those are long-term answers to our front three. I don't necessarily think that they're replacing anyone now, but they are the replacements for the players that are leaving down the road. And then people are going to be like, oh, who do we have to replace Mane when he's gone? Well, it's like, well, we bought him already, right? I mean, I think, and that's the way you do business. That's a smart way to do business, because there's no worse position than to go into a transfer window with everybody knowing what you need. So, like, I think that's what the way we have to look at the squad. Now, the real question mark is who's behind Mo, right? I mean, because essentially that's going to be an issue. There's nobody there. You got Cade Gordon. He's like, what, 16? Like, so I think that's going to be something that we look at in the summer window. And then we've got a couple of midfield spots, but we're buying now at replacements for the future.
Chris Strain says, I think Jota's ability in the air gives him the push to head up top. No pun intended there. But I mean, I do agree, especially with his finishing ability and like how good he's in the air, kind of like gives us a different dimension going forward. But going back to what you're saying, Bickler, he does not do as much of what Bobby does in terms of kind of pull center backs all over the place with his movements and get him all confused and stuff like that. You do not see that as much from Jota. I think in terms of press, we get that from both, but I think we do not get that from as much from Jota in terms of like kind of like shifting around the center backs. Dave Leslie says, "Good point, Bickler." There you go, Bickler.
Occasionally, I have one.
Well, we're done for at least till March. We're good to go, I think now.
Yeah.
So, Gally, what do you make of it? How does this impact the squad? I guess I'm more after how does it impact the current players right now in terms of their mentality or how they play rest of the season?
So I think it's only a positive. And I made the comment in our Discord channel after the announcement came, right? We were all like school kids. We were giddy. We were making pot shots. We were making jokes. We were all excited. You know, we couldn't believe we signed this player. And there was all this energy and verb, right? And a week ago, we were like, Dower and Origi was hurt and Taki doesn't score. And we started a kid in the League Cup semifinal. And you know, we're not going to sign anyone. And it's amazing, right? What a signing, a little bit of life into a squad. And I think when you sign a player of his talent at a time when the players were reading and hearing the same things we were, that they weren't doing any business in January, I think it galvanizes the team. And it makes a team feel, it makes players that are on the fringe work harder. It makes the club and the supporters get more excited for the next match day. And it brings an energy to training. You know, I used to listen to a lot of sports radio, and I know you hate baseball, and I've heard this in basketball, but it's the exact same way, Timuchin. You hear it all the time. When you have a contending team that does nothing at an opportunity to strengthen in a championship moment, that reverberates through the players. That sends a message from management to the players that, like, we're not strengthening, we're not getting better here. And I do think that's when clubs and teams get stale. And I think the energy and the life and the competition that this kid is going to bring for the next 2-3 months. So we make this comment. I'm going to say it right now. That kid wasn't bought to sit on the bench. So for my money, Sadio Mane either steps his game up and wins back, or honestly, when Paul asks who is the helpful cover on the right, Sadio Mane is one of the options to cover on the right if Diaz is starting on the left. And again, that's that depth. And to Paul's point, if Sadio wants to be here and play in that environment, I don't believe Sadio Mane wants to hear he is not one of the 3 first names on the team sheet every week. It doesn't seem like it's the player he is or in his mentality. I hope I'm wrong and he goes world beater on us the rest of the year. But I could see him getting there. One of those 3 is not getting another contract. They're not going to extend 3 players over 30 years old. And I believe they see a value in Firmino. And I believe the best player in the world plays on the right. So, you know, I know the both of you are smart enough to know, you know, 2 + 1 = 3. So, I'm going out right now. I'll say it, you know, January 31st, they will not extend all 3 of those players.
See, I understand your point about everybody else in the, you know, like the locker room or whatever. Mind you, you lost me when you said baseball, but that's a different story. So when you
don't know anything about sports, so that's okay.
Baseball, come on, it's not sport. If it was a sport, that'd be a different deal. But anyway, so I understand what you're saying when you sign. You know, the club kind of shows intentions and stuff like that. But I think in my mind, that applies to a guy like Van Dijk or Alisson, who's in goal, right? And who does not have any competition to lose their place. I think that's what I'm going to be kind of interested to see how it affects Sadio. And, we've already seen kind of like Bobby in terms of because every player is different. I mean, some player might get that as a push and perform a lot better. And some players might kind of not handle that looking over the shoulder very well. So it's going to be interesting to see. I really don't know because I don't think either of those, Sadio has never been in that position before to even, like I say, before we couldn't, who was going to play there, Ox instead or Divac going to go in? You never had that concern, even when you're not performing. So I think it's going to be interesting to see kind of how he responds, I guess.
I guess my point was, if a player doesn't want to fight for their spot, if a player sees a new talent getting added to the roster as so much competition that they're okay or they're upset with the club for strengthening it, then they have a selfishness at a different level than I want at the club, and they can go play somewhere else. And I think that's the mentality I've heard from Klopp all the time, right? I'll never sell a player or make a guy leave who doesn't want to leave. That's why Origi is going to be here till the day his contract runs out, as Paul always says, right? Because he doesn't want to leave, and Klopp's not going to force him out the side. But I think if you are upset because they're buying and strengthening, that's the mentality that holds clubs back. The one thing that made United great through all the championship runs was he went and bought a player after every title they won. He didn't care. He brought in players every year because there was going to be new competition. And City has done it extremely well the entire time. I mean, City went out and bought a striker. Granted, his ugly face, Gab Jesus, didn't work out for him. They bought a striker to replace the best striker in the history of the club when he was still in his prime, because that's what Pep believed they needed. It didn't work out, and Aguero won his spot back. But, Jesus was bought to replace Aguero. The plan was to sell him in a year or two because Pep didn't think he would fit his system. I just believe that you have to keep strengthening. And I think when you strengthen, it's on your current players to fight for their spots. And if a guy like Taki can't handle the emotions of bringing in a guy like Diaz, then he was never going to make it at this club.
No, like I say, we don't know if maybe Stadio could not freaking care less. I mean, we don't know. That's what I mean. It's gonna be interesting to see how they react because I think it was like this week or last week I read, I think it was from Aldridge talking about, having like, I think the Costas Robertson was the example, bringing that backup, improving the starters' play. And I don't know if I necessarily agree with that one. If anything, Robertson play might have improved because we didn't run him into the ground, for example. But that's kind of like a discussion for a different day we can get to. So let's move on, this is kind of like an evolving story and is changing. The latest we have, actually, this is kind of like a tweet we shared as well, that the Fabio Carvalho deal is actually done. It's complete, but it's going to become official in summer. So I don't think the paper did not, because initially the talk was that Nico's loan was going to be part of the deal. And then once they agreed to everything, the paperwork did not get in time. I personally do not know as much about the player, and I really do not trust. I mean, I watched a couple of YouTube videos, but I don't trust that shit. So Bickler, let's get a scouting report from you on this kid and what you think it brings.
Oh man, ESPN Plus is the best subscription you can have right now because you're watching championship football, which is absolutely awesome. I love this kid so much. I will say this. I was surprised when we were heavily linked with him, not because he's a young English talent. We love doing that, but because he's a 10, and we don't play a 10 in our system. We don't have an attacking mid that sits in the center of the park at all in our system. So I'm not this kind of further enhances this theory that I have that we are looking at a tactical shift down the line here towards a 4-2-3-1, because that would allow him to fit into that system. It would allow for more attack-oriented midfielders like Keita to show some worth. I'm very excited about him. I am a little bit wary of what this looks like tactically if we don't make a formation shift for him. He reminds me very often, and I love the irony in this because I think I brought up 3 or 4 pods ago how I was so happy that Coutinho was at Villa because we never had to talk Phil Coutinho again. He's essentially a young Phil Coutinho. You watch him, he has a low center of gravity. He's super shifty on the ball. He's got excellent vision. He can thread the ball through on a dime. He's got a great outside strike, can hit it from range. He's got all the things that Phil had at a very young age. He's very Coutinho-esque. But you got to remember, Klopp couldn't figure out Coutinho. He didn't have the pace or the strength to play up top, and he was not good enough defensively to play in the midfield. That was part of the reason we kind of got it was almost a blessing that Phil kind of forced his way out when you look at the money we got for a player that was outstanding, but we weren't truly finding the best in our system. So I do worry about that a little bit about him, but he's young enough. He's 18. We'll see what happens, but I'm super excited about this one. I love this deal.
How about you, Gally? Like I say, it's not official. It's semi-official. Even if it is not official, it looks like all the pieces are in place since Nico is going to Fulham for the rest of the season on loan. And that seemed like it was kind of like a part of the deal. The money was agreed to, and the kid's mind is probably, the kid is already at Liverpool, probably in his head. What do you make of the ordeal, even though it is not 100% official?
So I too have been very voiced about this signing. I was almost in some ways more excited about this than Diaz. Not that I think he's a better player than Diaz, but I believe that this is the type of coup when you get a young, up and coming, high level talent. And we're not talking about a young kid. He is playing against grown men in the championship. He's been playing first team football for over 2 years. So since he was 17 with Fulham. Fulham plays if you haven't got an ESPN Plus membership, I strongly recommend picking one up and watching Fulham. One of the greatest things about it is they air Fulham every week because Fulham right now is by far head and shoulders the best side in the championship. And they're playing EPL level football. And if this squad right now that they have was in the Premier League, I believe they would be out of the relegation zone right now because they could compete with the Watfords. They have a better team than Norwich. I believe they win that championship by 10 plus points. I love two things about this deal. I love that the kid's 19. They say that he grew an inch last year, which means he's literally still getting physically bigger, and he is still gaining size and bulking up. So, to Paul's point, I do think he looks like a 10 now. At times, he plays a false 9, depending on their setup. I think he could be a floating, interchangeable guy. I do think there's a chance we end up in the 4-2-3-1, as Paul said, as time goes on. I also think there's a chance that this 19-year-old kid at 22 is a striker or a right wing. He's 19 years old. We're about to grab a diamond. And all everyone told me was Harvey Elliott is either a right wing or a 10, and he won't work in your system. And then he showed up and was literally looked like he was trying to unseat the captain to start the season. So to me, Klopp sees things in players and then focuses on their skills and makes them better at what they do. So he'll find a spot for them. The thing I love the most, if the reports are true, was when they were doing the whole negotiations, he told Liverpool, I want you, I'll sign the 5-year deal, but I'll only make this move if you send me back to Fulham. And when they were like, well, that's the plan, his reasoning and his people's reasoning was we have a job to do and I haven't finished it. I'm helping these people get up. And I was like, my heart was pounding. Like I was so excited because if you're a 19-year-old kid and you already have the mental angst to one, handle being in a locker room with Mitrovic and not getting arrested 3 times a weekend, and 2, that you have the grounding that you're already thinking about the bigger picture about the club and your supporters. It was very similar to Harvey finally going back and getting to see a match, for Blackburn Rovers and actually getting to get addressed by the fans. And he said he cried because he had never had that kind of an ovation because the fans at that stadium never got to cheer for him, not once in that awesome loan he had. So, I just think it was a really, really great move by Liverpool to jump the queue. And to be fair, I think it's an outstanding move for Nico to take. I think Nico is going to get to showcase his skills. And I think if he's smart, he may try to negotiate this as a permanent move for himself next year when they come up. Because I think the people in Fulham who play that attractive brand of football, Marco Silva's finally got a team playing the way he wanted. It's amazing when you don't coach a bunch of bums at Everton. But he's got talented footballers that actually want to play football. And I think Nico's going to fit like a glove with them on the right-hand side.
Yeah, Jamie's like, wait, last I heard the deal is dead. But I think it is not official because the paperwork was not done in time. But I don't know if you want to call it like a gentleman's agreement or whatever. But just the fact that Nico part of it is done and everything else was agreed to, I mean, unless Fulham just totally turns on this, sounds like this will be a done deal come summer. And this podcast, after these two guys, was brought to you by ESPN Plus, where you can watch Fulham play nonstop. Honestly, they might get a lot of memberships out of this because I don't think there were so many Liverpool fans, including us over here, let's face it, watching Colombia take on Peru, which, let's face it, normally none of us would probably
It has
like.
to be Peru's most watched game ever.
So I can definitely see a lot of memberships going up just to watch this kid because, like I say, even though it is not official, I feel like it's pretty much a done deal. And that was like the latest tweet that actually we shared from Pedro Almeida about the deal between Liverpool and Fulham by Fabio Carvalho is complete. However, only become official in summer. Basically, the paperwork did not make it in time. So for the paperwork that did make in time, want to get your guys' take on the move that shocked you guys the most. Gally, let's start with you on this one.
Shocked me the most. I'd say the deal that I was, kind of came out of nowhere. I knew Newcastle was trying to sign everyone literally under the planet that was available. But I actually, and we can talk about whatever business we want on the good signings. I think their window was absolutely fabulous, to be honest. But the attack-minded midfielder that they signed, I'm going to butcher his name, Bruno Guimaraes from Olympique Lyonnais. He is straight fire. And when you see him play, you'll be blown away that he went to Newcastle. I genuinely believe he wanted the Premier League money and he wanted out of Lyon. And he made that move. I think that he could literally start in 15 of the Premier League sides. And I think Newcastle is going to realize that they signed quite a gem. And I think that he will be the reason that they end up staying up, to be honest. So that one shocked me, not as much that they went after him, because they went after every single player on the planet, but the fact that they not only got it over the line, that it was actually, he had other options and he chose them.
Yeah, Newcastle did make a lot of moves. Obviously, we expected it because they have the money now and they need to stay up and they got a relegation battle. I think it's going to be a matter of, is it too many new names at the same time and how fast they're going to gel kind of thing. But Bickler, how about you?
There's a few. I think the one that kind of surprised me was Ramsey to Rangers. I thought, I know that's not sexy and exciting. Don't nod at me, Gally. Come on. My thing is that this is a player that's been, this is the thing that's been rumored for like 2 years to Juventus. And I thought that they were going to move finally to afford his wages. And I thought that was a player that made a lot of sense for them in terms of veteran leadership and quality and being familiar with the Premiership. And to just see him go to the Scottish League is a little bit surprising to me. I know that's not a sexy answer, but that was the one that kind of stood out to me today.
Gally does not approve. No.
No. I was just more like, it was more because they almost had to give him away. I heard that actually Newcastle said no thanks when offered.
Which is crazy to me. That's wild to me.
But I actually heard rumors. I think he's done. Like the coach at Juve said, when asked about him one time, they were like, "What do you see in training?" And he said, "He comes to training." Like, I think he's absolutely toast.
He's in roll call. I know he was going to be loaned to, there were rumors of him being loaned to Galatasaray or Beşiktaş and stuff like that in Turkey. But I don't think anybody wanted to pick up his wages and stuff like that. The one that shocked me the most was Eriksen going to Brentford. Because I don't know about you guys, after something like that happening where you're practically dead on the soccer field, I don't think I could, even if I convinced myself, which I don't know if I could, because you basically, everything could have been gone in a second. I don't think I could convince the rest of the family to let me go out there again. I mean, does that seem odd to you guys? I realize, I mean, you might love the sport and the doctors might clear you and all that good stuff, which I'm sure they have. It's not like, he rolled the dice and decided to go. But I thought that was really shocking because I felt like, when they were talking about, he's getting better and stuff, I was like, doesn't matter. I don't think that guy will ever play again.
I just feel like you could be home for like 6 months to a year and Angie'd be signing that paperwork for Brentford. You know what I mean?
She'd pay them.
Wrong. That is so
She'd pay half your wages.
Loan me out and cover the wages. Just to get me some experience in a different family. Yeah, that's possible, I guess. I just thought, it was like kind of like really odd that, he would take the chance personally and like I say,
I'd be like, hey, Angie, what's he been doing? Oh, he shows up. He's like Ramsey. He just comes into the kitchen, like leaves the cabinets open.
I do actually leave the coffee cabinet open every morning, mind you, but that's a different story. So, gentlemen, any parting thoughts from this transfer window? These deadlines are always crazy, or anything that shocked you guys? One thing I wanted to actually mention and ask you guys is, are you guys shocked that like a team like United did not do anything? Or like teams that were fighting for these Champions League spots? I know you guys talked a lot about like who could be number 4 and stuff like that in Thursday's podcast, Gally, in terms of like relegation and stuff like that. And by the way, Jamie says Gally's 15-year-old body out there like an Energizer bunny. Are you drinking it like an energy drink, or is that what it is? Or
my energy drink.
You don't even know what you're drinking. Drinking Massachusetts state drink. I mean, are you guys shocked that like some of those teams? I know like Tottenham just was talking out loud too much, so whoever they were interested in, somebody has snatched him. Like, stop thinking out loud, people. But Arsenal kind of picked up some scraps, but I felt like United would have made a move, especially for that midfield. Even worse, they kind of let Van der Beek go to Everton.
United did nothing. Really, United did nothing. They weakened. They lost one of their best front players, and they lost, a midfielder they don't play. The Spurs, Spurs did get too vocal. They tried to make moves for Conte. I think that was part of why they were vocal, though. They wanted Conte to see they were trying, and it just didn't work. But, they made a double signing today that's going to turn out well for them. I never pronounce his name right. Klusevic or from Juventus. They got him, and they got Betancourt over the line really late. And Betancourt is going to be a very good, because he's a Conte-type player. He's going to sit in that midfield from Juventus. He's going to, I know Villa was in on him, trying to get him, and then they were going to supposedly sell Douglas Luiz to Tottenham. And then Villa was upset because they wanted Betancourt, and Spurs were like, took a Liverpool and just jumped the shark and went and got the player that they wanted. So, I still think that race is wide open. I'd be disappointed as a West Ham supporter today. 2+ years, they've been staying right within it. They're right there, and they do nothing to strengthen again. They don't pick up a defender. They couldn't get a deal for Nat Phillips across the line. They couldn't get a deal for a Dan Burn. Like, you needed a Premier League defender, I think, to give them the solidity, and they didn't get them that. And they didn't get Antonio, a backup striker. So, for me, I think the race of the top 4 is wide open. It's down to Spurs, Arsenal, and United, maybe West Ham on the outside. And again, I keep saying Spurs, and the only reason I'm saying it is I believe they have the manager who can see a team across the line and win some points on his own. And I think the other managers will actually drop points along the way. But I think it's a crapshoot is what it is. Not surprising, Chelsea too.
Yeah, so for the top 4, you're saying like Liverpool, City, Chelsea, Tottenham.
Yep.
How about you, Bickler? And are you shocked that?
I don't know. I'm not as bullish on Tottenham as Gally is, just because like ever since Modric, they haven't done anything. Like they can't develop players in that midfield. Like they just sent Dembele back to France, and he was Betancourt 2 years ago. Like and I rate him. I think he's a fantastic player.
I think so too.
I think he's a great box-to-box, classic box-to-box mid. I would have loved him at Liverpool. So I'm kind of waiting to see on Tottenham. Conte is a good manager. He will definitely make them better defensively and harder to break down. I just don't know. I'm not convinced he can fix that midfield. We'll see. I am shocked United didn't do anything just because they have never shown a reluctance to continue to add more deadwood to already pre-existing deadwood. So I assume that we'd see at least 4 signings that would turn out to be garbage, and we got nothing. So I think that we'll have to just wait. I'm guessing that they're going to do a big summer clear out, and you're going to see a lot of turnover then. But we'll see what happens. I am shocked that United didn't do anything, and I'm shocked that some of these teams in relegation, like outside of Newcastle, didn't do more. For sure. I'm surprised that Norwich didn't do more. I would be so frustrated to be a Norwich fan and just continually bounce back and forth between the Championship and the Premier League because it's so financially difficult to do that and keep all your ducks in a row. It's just a recipe for disaster. And I think when you're that close, you might as well just invest on the front end and make sure you stay for a few years.
Yeah, because they've tried not doing anything last time they came up. And obviously it didn't work. And then they tried signing. Yeah, they just can't get the combination right. From the comments, you can tell Ash Harris dwells in music a lot because everything is. Every note message as I read it, I'm kind of singing it in my head. So, who was your top 4 choice, by the way, Bickler, for Champions League next year?
At the beginning of the year or now?
No, now. Why would I ask about the beginning?
Yeah, let's see. The obvious is City, Liverpool, Chelsea. I'll go Arsenal. Arsenal. I mean, I just think that they're a team that's improving. Week after week, their form continues to get better. They've got some outstanding young players. It sounds like they're finally going to get rid of Aubameyang, who went from getting his captaincy stripped to getting pushed out the door for free, which is absolutely nuts. That tells you that's how much that somebody is such a toxic poison to a team that they're just getting pushed out on a free. My eyebrow is raised because you just signed him at $250,000 a week 2 years ago. So if he was a cancer, you probably knew it back then. So yeah, I'll go Arsenal, but it's going to be a tight race between Arsenal and Tottenham. I think United are a sinking ship. I think their identity was stripped the moment they brought Ronaldo in and took the ball out of Bruno's hands. I think when Bruno's in there and he's starting and he doesn't have to worry about that guy, I think they look like a team that has an identity, and they haven't since.
So let's take a quick peek on the bottom. Ash says, talking about this today, why would you sign for Newcastle for more than a year at the moment? They have the money to buy whoever the hell they want in the summer. Knowing you're just a help us stay up player, no pride in that. And I do agree with that. And I'm assuming it's kind of limited in terms of what they could get and obviously the situation they're in. But then they could also be afraid of the Saudi prince coming after him or sending his boys with the chainsaws. Who knows? But for relegation, who are your picks right now, Gally?
Yeah, I don't really understand that concept of why there's no pride in that or whatever. Because my concept is the pride is if you're Matt Target, you want to play football and you have the stones to go to Tyneside and play in a relegation battle, or you're Dan Byrne and you're from that area and you're going to go help keep Newcastle up, or you're Chris Wood and you grew up a Newcastle supporter even though you grew up in Australia. To me, that shows gumption. Kieran Trippier, you're from the Midlands.
I think the point is in terms of how long you're signing the contract.
Well,
not the
so
fact
from
that
a financial standpoint,
you're going to be replaced.
Yeah, from a financial standpoint, that's actually better for players. If they get a short-term deal,
guarantee it. You're saying
because you're going in and your wages go up, and then you're on to a next contract, and your wages generally don't go down from what you were last
going
paid.
Somewhere else.
Yeah,
I don't know. I felt like those guys were all. I thought it was good moves, and I think it takes gumption to show up in a relegation battle, and I think it's important when you sign a player that they have the right mentality, and they seem like they sign guys who have been in relegation battles before. Burnley players, Brighton players. Trippier came from Burnley. To me, that mindset was there. Aston Villa.
I think that was smart in terms of getting those guys, but in some ways, it does take guts. But most of these guys know that when they do go there, And if the team does get relegated, let's face it, like kind of like what Bickler was alluding to earlier with Norwich. I mean, they have to dump those players. They cannot take him down to, championship with them with the salaries and stuff. Can't just afford it. So those guys always have a door open for them to leave.
Right.
But so do they save the season? Are you putting them in the relegation?
I actually have them saved. I think they could finish 1 point out. They could finish 5-6 points safe. I'm going to stay with the fact that the eye test to me says Norwich and Watford are not Premier League sides. And by the end of the season, they will finish 20th and 19th. And I then believe that it's going to come down to, Burnley, Newcastle. And I will say this, I've said it for a couple weeks now. Brentford is a sinking ship. They are leaking. It doesn't help when your star striker is saying F the club on video. I really believe that they are struggling. And as they continue to struggle, and if you look at their next 4 or 5 matches, when all is said and done, if Brentford isn't have a 4 or 5 point cushion when we all get back to the even games played down the stretch, I think Brentford could be in trouble because if you ask me the 3 teams who don't have a quality Premier League side to compete for 38 matches, it's the 3 teams who came up.
So you picking Brentford?
I'm gonna keep
pick one.
Burnley. I'm going with Burnley purely on I'm voting with my heart. But yes. I believe Brentford's in real trouble here. I really do.
I can second that motion of voting with the heart and Sean Douche going back to championship. Bickler, what do you have?
There are a number of teams that, like Gally's talking about Brentford, which I agree they've been on terrible form, especially defensively. I think Brentford, Leeds, and Everton are all kind of in the same boat where they've just been so bad for so long. And we're sorting out between teams like Brentford, who played 23 games, and Burnley has played 18. So it's we have 5 games in hand. They have 5 games in hand. I don't know if they're going to be playing during the World Cup or not. But it's going to be I don't know what's going to happen with those teams, and it's going to be very interesting to see what happens with those teams. For me, the bottom 3 is still the same for me. I don't think Burnley has enough firepower to get there, even with Cornette, who's a lovely player, McNeil, who's a good player. I think Burnley, Watford, Norwich are probably my teams to go down. I think Norwich is the worst of them. I'd put Watford there, and then Burnley probably above them, but only ever so slightly. That's my bottom 3.
I agree with that trio. Like I say, my heart puts Newcastle in there as well. But I think they will. I think they made enough smart moves to kind of save their season and kind of regroup and kind of attack the Premier League properly next year. But I think it's because of who they're competing against more than the team that they have become that makes me think they're going to make. Because like Gally is saying, when you're going against teams like Burnley and Brentford, all you have to do is do better than them. And I think that's very doable with the guys they signed.
And I will say one thing that no one really talks about a little bit is these are the smallest squads, right? They're the smallest units. And they're going to sometimes be asked to play every 3 days at times of the year that they're not normally doing that. Yeah. The plan is to backfill most of these games after game week 30 and 32 because they want to make sure that all the Champions League sides aren't trying to reschedule games, and they have TV rights that don't allow them to put games on, domestic games, midweek against the Champions League. And they've already said, because of their TV right deals, they're not putting a single game on that could be aired on any of their platforms that would fall against an international gaming right. So I think some of these teams are going to be playing 2 games a week, 3-4 weeks in a row. And I just don't know how that's going to work for a side like Burnley or a side like Brentford that just isn't deep enough. And a club like Newcastle, even though they got some dregs on it, they now have a little bit more depth in numbers from the people that they bought. And I just think that we're going to see that, really kind of trickle through. I will say, leave it to Burnley to sell a 6'8" striker and then go out and buy a German 6'7" striker, right? Only they would go out and replace. And I love the idea that they got a guy whose name is basically worse. There's nothing worse than Sean Dyche and his new striker.
Yes, it'd be a happy day. We'll be going to be throwing a party if Sean Dyche goes down, or Sean Douche, as I like to call him. Well, gentlemen, that's it for this week. Thanks to both of you. Thanks to everybody commenting, listening, sharing, liking, all that good stuff. On Thursday's podcast, we will be back, and pretty exciting to finally see the boys on the field again this weekend. So thanks a lot, everyone, and see you guys next week.